I will shortly introduce you a bit to the office and our methodology of working, and then I will dive a bit more into 3 projects, and I think it fits very well with what Ellen explained, which kind of gives like the overarching kind of way of doing master planning and public space in Norway, and then I think it's very nice to dive deeper into some of the projects that we have been working with. Super nice to be here, really exciting and happy to join you here. Let's see if this works. So this is a part of my office standing in one of a harbor transformation project. We are pretty large. We have 3 offices in Copenhagen, Oslo and Aarhus. In total we are 130 people in the office. So being a landscape architect, that's really quite big. We say about ourselves that we are a nature-based design studio. So it goes a bit away from this classical approach of being a landscape architect. We design places for life, all life, and by that we really mean that we're not only designing for people, but we're really designing also with and for nature. And I was saying it to Ida, Ellen was asked, what's like your personal motivation in it? And you were answering it's really to enhance quality of life and really doing something better for the people. I would also say it's really about nature. It's so important to take nature serious in urban planning. And we do that, and this I think fits very well with DELTALAB and your approach. We really believe it's super important to do this interdisciplinary. The problems that we're dealing with in urban transformation and urban planning, they're really complex. And it's really hard to just be a designer. So we really need to engage with different colleagues and different disciplines. So in my office, we are landscape architects, obviously, but we are urban planners. But we also, like you see, we have a philosopher in the office, and we have biologists, we have lighting designers, anthropologists, and we really believe also that we need this kind of scientific knowledge and then designing with that knowledge together. Classically, obviously, we work with public space and landscape design. We work a lot with master planning, and this is an image of Oslo, as you might reckon by now, with the opera. So we engage in a lot of master planning and also even bigger city strategies, because it's also there that you start defining public space. And we work a lot on biodiversity and climate adaptation. And it's, in a way, in this kind of threefold. It's, of course, about design. That's what we do. That's our tool. But it's also by understanding nature and people and designing for them. Trying to connect people to a new nature and taking nature and its processes, making them an integrated part into urban development. It's really, I think, one of the key tasks of what we can do as landscape architects and urban planners. Because humans have really exploited and used globally a lot of this planet, no? 78% is somehow modified, used, exploited by human beings, globally set. And this is an enormous impact that we have on humans. And this is even more strange when you see, if you look at all life, then the humans is really, 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 really tiny part of the world's ecosystem. So there's so much more, and why shouldn't that be important?
Sorry, is it by the number, just the quantitative, or by biomass?
Biomass, yeah. So it's really, it's quite amazing. This, if you kind of think on how much impact we have and how important we think we are, but maybe everything else is more important. So this is what we do basically, and this is a student housing project in Copenhagen. It's a very low budget project. It was a terrible space when we came there, and we transformed it. It's a roof garden. It's actually on a construction, and the client, the student administration, they really wanted to have a more social space, and we do that by adding nature. So we, of course, we enhance the quality of life for the students, but we also give something back to nature. In very long time in modern town planning, we are kind of thought like this. And in Norway, that's definitely true, to kind of think, we have so much nature outside of our cities, let's build just great cities, let's build great buildings and really good infrastructure, and then the nature can be outside of that. I think by now, through climate crisis and biodiversity crisis, we all agree that we need to use nature in our cities, and that we really need to integrate nature into urban planning, because there's such a lot of values that nature can give to us. I mean, there's utility values, obviously, about CO2 reduction, better air quality, rainwater management, and so on. And there's amenity values, that is the good things for us people that nature gives us, because nature can create a sense of place and really give us a pleasant identity to our cities. Nature is good for us people. I mean, there's done a lot of research showing that it shortens sick days, kind of makes our creativity better, it's good for mental health, and so on. So nature can do a lot of good things for us. And it can give us these amazing spaces. This is a student housing project where you kind of really get this wow effect. Or it could be like this really tranquil spaces on the waterfront, really inviting for reflection. And totally different experience than the picture before, but really also engaging with nature. Nature also has many values in urban planning and creation, because it also enhances the economic value. That's what we see a lot in our projects, that by doing well-designed urban public spaces that have some level of nature, it also really makes market prices go up, and really also enhances, and that's what I always tell my clients. I mean, it's also, they want to earn money, and I think we can take nature, and yes, it's also about earning money in the end, what the client wants. It is really also enhancing the project in many levels. I think climate crisis and like the last few years with heavy rainfalls, with floodings, with heat waves and so on, I think in general you could say the public has more understood that this is something to be taken serious. And I feel that there is a better understanding now for what we can do as landscape architects, and how we really, by working with nature-based solutions, also really can at least try to solve some of these problems. So this is one of the examples on climate adaptation. It's in Copenhagen. It's an infrastructure project, which basically, it's a roundabout. We, together with the municipality of Copenhagen, that has for the last 10 years worked intensively on climate adaptation, because they had a heavy rainfall in 2011, which had a huge impact on the town, and it was very costly to all the damages that was done by the rain. So the city made this plan to have 300 projects on climate adaptation. This is one of them. And then, of course, in an existing city, there's not really space. I mean, there might be some leftover space, but you also have to find space for nature in cities. So this is what it was before. I mean, all the buildings, nothing changed. What we did change is the road system. I mean, it's still a road, it's still a roundabout, but while before you had kind of this green space in the middle that wasn't very accessible because there was all this traffic around, and the edge zone along the buildings was very small, we kind of changed that, saying, okay, but traffic, maybe it's not the most important in the city. Yes, there needs to be traffic, it needs to be there, but we can solve it in a bit more elegant manner, and then creating space for nature, and obviously also creating really a lot of space for people to be in the city. So this is how it looks, and it's kind of nice because you cannot plan this as a landscape architect. One of the nicest things working with landscape, that planting 600 trees in kind of a very wild manner, it changes continuously. Every time I visit the project, it's like it looks different now because trees grow and some trees die, and that's always, actually there's this, maybe that's not a dead tree. There's some dead trees in the project that died didn't survive the establishing phase. We leave them because it's great for insects, and it gives this whole kind of new urban jungle. And this project really also made that there's a lot of people suddenly using this space, and traffic noise is kind of filtered through the green, and really the space really created a new identity for this neighborhood. You can also, before I come to Oslo, I just thought it's also kind of fun we work a lot in other countries like Canada or the Middle East. I thought it's also nice to see like a really big scale harbor development. This one is in Toronto, and I just wanted to show you that even when you work in very high densities, you can still, if you have the ambition and you really push nature, you can also do this. Create this urban forest in this new density, and really trying to take nature serious. So this is down here, you see the scale of downtown Toronto. It's really big and amazing and different from what we are used to, but in a way we use our tools in all these kind of different places all over the world, and the need for this nature-based design and our knowledge is really something that is valuable to clients all over the world. So you see it's this kind of open, green, kind of foresty space in between these high-rise buildings, and Toronto has a really harsh climate, not so different from Oslo. So this is also very much about microclimate and how the flow of the wind kind of is channeled through the public space. And it's, again, it's, of course, I mean, it's taking nature serious, but it is about essentially also really creating good spaces for the people living there. So water edges and nature pause. I found this picture, I had to bring it. It's my daughter, you can maybe recognize it. She is standing in Opatija and we are looking into Rijeka. I've been traveling in Croatia a lot, and it's of course when you kind of start thinking Norway, Croatia, what's the connection? I think in one sense Norway has a really long coastline. It's a lot longer than Croatian coastline, but it is kind of similar, no? This kind of coastline that goes in and out, and you have all these islands and so on, and you have also a lot of old harbors that needs transformation or that are in continuous development. I'm going to show you 3 projects. One is in Trondheim, and then obviously Oslo, Bjørvika, and one is very close by to Oslo. And these projects, yes, they are all about nature. I mean, in Norway, we have a lot of weather. So nature could also be rain and wind and harsh climate. It's not always the lush nature that we will see in the project, but it's kind of getting close to the water edge. So 3 projects, and I choose them because they, in a way, for me, they show different things. The one in Trondheim, it's kind of a window of opportunity. It's not related to real estate development, but it's related to an infrastructure project, and it's really kind of about connecting and embracing the local nature. Then Bjørvika, I wrote, it's a bit a classic approach, no? It's a very long horizon. I mean, we have been working on it for 20 years in my office. It's really placing importance on public space from the start, and I think this is really exceptional with the Bjørvika plan. It's also very carefully designed, but on a reflection on it, maybe there's something about also leaving space. We were talking about saunas and lunch break. It is a bit about that, no? How to, like in big plans, where can you also find these spaces that may be a bit different. I come back to that. And then Tankaya, it's really, for me, it's a bit a new way of developing. It's a very kind of slow growth harbor transformation where we work a lot with piloting projects, working together with people, co-creating together with the people, and by that reconnecting the city to the waterfront. So here's a window of opportunity. This is a city of Trondheim, as you see. Not unlike Rijeka, a lot of harbor area, kind of a lot of area that is in transformation and that is kind of being redeveloped. A lot of the harbor has lost its function. This is how it looked in 25, and you see this huge railway kind of completely disconnecting the old city center. It's really down here, so it's really kind of disconnecting the city from the open sea. And then you see a picture what it is today. It's not so much different. I mean, old, new, it's still the railway here. But there's one important thing, and this is our design here. It's a harbor front that we designed, and that came into being because some of the infrastructure was reconfigured, and the state road department, they had a competition on then what to do with the waterfront. And this new waterfront, in a way, it's a way of inviting the people back to the water and also trying to connect this neighborhood with the new developments in the north. So it's a very tiny, tiny strip that's being done. You see the road that was changed and partly put in a tunnel that created the opportunity to create a broader space, but it's really this kind of concrete strip that we did that people can use walking along the waterfront, and then it's like tiny places where you kind of can go for a swim and so on. It's, of course, as I said, it's a lot of weather, so it's also a lot about wave protection and so on, so it needs to be very robust and sturdy. It can be flooded, obviously, the space. So design is really about creating robustness, but really giving this new opportunity to people. And suddenly, I mean, you still have the train, you still have the street, and so on, but it really at least enables people to walk along the harbor edge. And I think that's important. And it's really designed with a local material and kind of taking this local identity, local climate seriously. A lot of the stones that are in the project came actually from digging out the tunnel for the road. So these stones were then placed in the landscape design and reused. Oslo and the fjords. You have heard a lot about it already. This is how it looks more or less right now with the opera and the Munch Museum and all the new housing blocks, the barcode that in Alan's picture was quite like in the front. It's kind of now in the second row, so it's kind of also disappeared. So it's really an extremely successful harbor development, and it has created all these spaces. Like Alan explained, it was very visionary, I think, 20 years ago, early on in the project, to really define these public commons, public spaces within the urban tissue, and really ensuring that this will come and this will happen. This is how it looked when we started the project. We did the competition in 2005, 2006, so I found it in the office. I thought it was really nice to see it, no? When you see the nice images. But this, what it really was a harbor area. It was really grey, it was not accessible at all. Looks a bit like Rijeka. So this was a huge challenge, no? To kind of, and very visionary of the town planners and the politicians, and at that time to really think so long forward and to think we can create something here. Because when you look from it in the air, it looked like this, no? All about infrastructure. So the opera would later be approximately here.
There was 80s, or what was the...
That's like 90s. Yeah. So it's not so long ago, no?
20 years.
So you see the central station, which is like still there, more or less looks the same still, but all of this kind of infrastructure was taken away. As Alan said, the big street was placed in the fjord tunnel, and by that it opened a lot of space to place both buildings and public spaces. So this more or less is what the competition plan looked like, and it's really kind of, as Alan explained, it's this fjord promenade, so you really can kind of always go along the water edge. Together with that, there is these common rooms, and what's nice about these rooms or these public spaces that they are, as you see, they're quite long, and by that really also also the second row of houses is in a way connected with the water. No? I think that's basically, if you would talk about the essence of this plan, it's really kind of these two things. It's a promenade and then these long kind of spaces connecting a lot of the built volume with these, with the harbor front. And that was a very early collage, so this is 2006 when we still did like this collage, and very kind of, well, it's kind of nice because it tells a lot what it is about. It's really kind of, okay, putting nature, as Anne explained, that was very discussed by then, 20 years ago. It was very kind of, especially through monument protection, they thought that's impossible, placing like big trees in these view lines, that's a no-go. They were very skeptical about that. They really want to have these open view lines towards the fjord. But yes, we were so lucky to win a competition with this vision on kind of, yes, creating these green spaces. And then this is how it looked. That was actually the first phase. You're crossing the, not everything is built, but it's there now. It's like you're crossing the railroad tracks on this bridge, and then you start in this space. So the railroad tracks would be here, and we built this like 10 years ago maybe in the barcode. It was one of the first spaces, and then this came almost 10 years later, which looks like this. You see the barcode in the back, and it's really a bit what we talked about. It's not so much about giving a lot of space. These spaces are really quite small, but they are designed very, very carefully. And in one sense, you could discuss this kind of commercialization about the ground floor, and it's very curated, agreed, but there's also something really good in Bjørvika that the inside, outside, they really are connected, and they really, I mean, it's of course nice to have a bakery here in the corner, and then you have this playground for the kids, and you can sit with your coffee and watch your children play. So this kind of curated city floor, it also makes that it is so well used and really so kind of, so thinking this inside outside together, I think it's often very important. What also works nice about the space, that there's all these kind of different playful elements. I mean, they look good, but they also enable kids to play, and you don't need to buy a coffee to be there. You can also just go to the playground.
Franziska, could you go back
one picture?
I just wanted to say, from the top above the railway lines and down to that industry, it's a 7-meter drop.
Yes.
And normally, with the sort of technical codes, 7-meter drops, you get lots of railings and steps and ramps and so on. But the clever thing you did was that you used this. First of all the commons were in black basalt stone, and the streets were in light granite. So the commons got the sort of domineering role through these spaces, and you may use this basalt, broken triangular basalt slates, and sort of manage the whole 7-meter drop without you knowing it.
Yeah, so in this design it's a long ramp, and if you need it, you can use it, but you can of course just go steep, no? So there's no range.
So
3D mesh.
Yeah, it's a 3D mesh. What I said about the trees is I think it's incredible story. So because of monument protection and this view lines, you see quite clearly this kind of development on thinking trees in the city, because in the first part we really had to push them towards the facade, so you still have this kind of view line, and then later everyone understands, yeah, maybe it's nice with trees anyhow, so we were able to put them a lot more central into the space, which also allows to kind of create this different zones, no? While this might be a terrace, this is like the central play area and so on, so it really kind of creates different situations to be used. So here you see it a bit from above with the central playgrounds, and of course the trees still have to grow to be really as big as in the old collage. I mean, what's really been wonderful is to really continuously working on these different spaces, also as a practice to, I mean, you also learn by doing it, no? Because it's such a long-term project. You also kind of reflect and, okay, some solutions maybe not working so well, and then you kind of, you continue to design. And this is one of the central spaces, like Anne said, it's the opening of the river and kind of creating also this water edge into a much more lush promenade, and also really kind of dropping the levels. This area might be flooded. We have seen that a couple of times, so the planting is chosen so it will survive. Sometimes when the wind stands, the seawater is kind of pushed into the river, and then it's really quite flat in there. But the nice thing about bringing the level down is, of course, that you feel much more connected with the water, and then really kind of creating this lush and diverse niches for people to enjoy the sun, or really, even though we're in the center of Oslo, really kind of to have this moment of really in nature. And then I wanted, yeah, here's the sauna that you're all gonna try. I think looking back on this plan and working on it for so long, there's also something about these kind of free spaces that weren't really planned. I mean, 20 years ago, no one thought about, oh, there's gonna come all these crazy people with their saunas. No one knew that. No one knew that the swimming and this kind of informal activity would play an important role. It's really lucky, I think, that throughout this whole development, there's still this kind of space which is a lot of discussion about, and it's still not decided what will it be. But this really also creates a space of opportunity. So this is really the last kind of creative resort in this. Yeah, and it really is a space.
And we did actually zone it for experimental and temporary buildings. But then when the big political strife was about the museum, then when we reformatted the plan for approval, we had to give the harbour authorities something, and then there was supposed to be 3,000 square meters of something there. But afterwards, it's been a lot of civic society engagement to keep this as it was eventually.
So we have a zoning tag named experimental.
We could just call it land use temporary activities.
Okay.
But it has been a lot of, should it now become a park, and should the photo museum at one point was in discussion, and so on. And in a way I feel maybe that's what it always should be, no? This kind of space for experimentation throughout this commercial development, to keep this kind of space for people to do something else and to experiment. Another thing Ellen also showed is this urban farming project that came in as an art project, but that also really kind of showed a different way of using the city and what kind of value you also can create in placing completely different functions and really giving space to people to engage differently in the community. I just gonna step shortly away from Björvika, but it's very closely related. So we talked a bit about experimentation. This is one of the streets where the City of Oslo is kind of experimenting with, okay, street transformation, building public spaces is very expensive, takes a lot of time. Maybe we can also use experiments and kind of testing out what does it mean if we close this road and turn it into green soft spaces and make this into kind of places for restaurants and for people. This is in a neighborhood Grönland. It's like north of the railway, so it's very closely connected to Björvika in a way. So you can see Björvika is here. And then there's this huge area north of the railway that is like the big transformation project in a way now. I just wanted to show you this because I think it's also an interesting tool for development that we are experimenting a bit in Oslo right now. We just released a public realm plan. There's a lot of developers in this area. All these red marked building blocks are redevelopment projects. Some with high rises, really a lot of money being put into this area. People that try to redevelop and earn money. So some of them are here. This is our clients. And what's interesting in Oslo, there is this so-called Områdeforum. It's like a
contact forum for the developers.
Yeah, it's like the developers come together in a shared group and then they start to discuss larger areas and together. And this is amazing because so the projects could look like this, no? Like high-rise building and so on. So I'm not going to explain this project. But what's really interesting, so we started this dialogue with this developer group. They invited us, okay, can you serve kind of a dialogue? The first thing we did is kind of map all the projects in the areas. And by doing that, of course, like the projects always take a bit of public space in the redevelopment, but they never match. There's always space in between that kind of no one thinks, I didn't think about that, so it's not part of the regulation. So in a way I feel this, and then, okay, but from mapping, we started to discuss, okay, what is the vision? What's the long-term vision? Like in 2050, maybe we have like this central urban space zone that is kind of redeveloped and so on. But I think in Oslo, Björvika was very visionary. I mean, they took down all this big infrastructure, they kind of dig the tunnel, they made a visionary plan, we have executed it. North of the railway station, we are very stuck. We are stuck with a state road department that doesn't really want to break down the bridge. We are stuck with the railway transportation system that don't really, it's very costly to change anything. So it's very, very slow to kind of make big plans. So what we discussed with the developers, okay, but we cannot wait. We also, it's a very kind of complicated neighborhood, criminality and so on. We have to start, we have to do some immediate work and kind of just get going with the area and kind of making this into a, from plan to action, to really get going and trying in a very different way to develop this area together. And it's really, at least time will show if we succeed. I really hope that this is in a way also a good model on kind of transforming an inner city area definitely when you're not really able to make this big visionary plans. This was 2 weeks ago, so this is one of the developments that yes, this is a good plan, we do understand and we want to engage with the neighborhood. And they did an event and they did an art installation transforming or starting to transform and piloting a park that is has a lot of criminality and kind of is very dysfunctional, trying to take it back and give something to the neighborhood and trying to engage and trying to make it better. And we don't know if it's going to work, but I think it's a great tool to pilot and to test things and to get going. And sometimes it just needs these small interventions. Which brings me to the last project, which is also a harbor transformation. It's really like this infrastructural kind of old harbor area where we are kind of testing a bit different development method with our clients. So this is a picture in winter. So the old cranes and the old warehouses and so on, it's all there.
Is this the end of February?
Yes. This is what you're gonna expect in February. And this is where we want to go, kind of keeping the industrial heritage, yes, but also giving it back to nature, giving it back to the people in Dram. Dram, by the way, is it's a half-hour train ride. It's a not so big city, but it has this relatively kind of industrial identity, I would say.
It is basically where not so long time ago, maybe even still now, all the cars imported in Norway arrived here to the port before they are sent first.
Yeah. So you see, this area has it's relatively big. It has a lot of kind of existing buildings, old industrial buildings. Of course, the developers want to earn money, so in the end, the goal is this. It's about building houses and earning money and so on. But it is also really about transforming it into a new neighborhood. And the master plan maybe could look like this. We don't know yet for sure. The master plan is developed through a communal development organization and a private owner. So they shared forces, which is very nice in this kind of early stage process. And then of course you can kind of put strategies into this. There should be blue-green spaces, like we have seen in Bjørvika, kind of connecting to the waters. Maybe there could be different neighborhoods. We could try to reuse all the old buildings. We could make a good infrastructure and good connection. But it's in many ways also about this kind of creating 100 good places. And this is a bit what we do and why I think this project is interesting in a way to develop. I mean, yes, you can have all these ambitions, but how do you actually come there? And we do that by kind of this co-creation process, by really engaging with the public, kind of preparing the site, and then what we want to reach ultimately is a sustainable urban development. But by doing this co-creation process, ultimately everything that we learn through this process is kind of looping back into the master plan. So the master plan is not fixed at all. It's not, we don't really know. So it's a very kind of different way of developing from Bjørvika, where you kind of had this great plan in the beginning. Here it's really kind of about testing, learning, engaging with the public. So this is the site more or less today. It has like space to create. That's what we're doing, and I show you some pictures on how we do it and how we kind of use what is there. So we do a lot of workshops with local people, with obviously also the stakeholders and the municipality and everyone that needs to be involved, discussing, drawing, looking at models and so on. And we do a lot of this, kind of trying to take this big infrastructure place back and trying already from the start, before the master plan. It will take more years to have a final regulation. Already now trying to create something and to learn out of this and trying to give something back to the neighborhood, also creating a new identity for the space, kind of, okay, what can it be in the future? And engaging really, for example, with a local school class, making them plant the tulip bulbs that will flower in spring, and maybe then take them back in spring and look at the flowers, look what you created, and kind of engaging, learning, and we as planners also learn a lot through these processes. It's super fun to do. I mean, it's also really nice to do this kind of projects. I think as a designer, it's sometimes very healthy to go out and dig and not only draw, because often these things are just drawn on a small sketch and then you just go out and do it, and it kind of really go out and create. I think that's very healthy to see what you actually can do with the space. So we like it very much, and I do believe that it's also, in times of economic uncertainty and big world problems and so on, maybe this is also a way to kind of do urban development a bit differently. So to sum it up, it's very kind of important to, it's all about collaboration and kind of talking with different stakeholders, trying to connect. For me, it's really about testing. Test and start. Let's just get going. Let's not just wait for big visionary plans. Maybe that's never going to happen. Maybe it's easier to kind of make small interventions, testing things out. And then this one is important. There's always space for nature, just if we prioritize it. If we not only think about infrastructure and so on, everything that needs to function in the city, but if we really, I believe there's always space for tree somewhere. And one more nice Croatian picture, which is on Hvar, and it's not so much about the place, but in a way, in Croatia, it's something very interesting, and I love this very much because it's, in a way, a very careful kind of, is it a design? But it's really kind of adjusted to nature, no? And that's just the small kind of stepping stones that we need, and it's really kind of keeping a lot of what is there. And you have such a fantastic coast and a fantastic nature. So please take it serious and embrace it. Embrace it also in the urban development, no? And maybe this is a very classical approach, no? In Harvard transformation, we place the buildings and then we can also kind of place a bit of nature. Maybe this is a way to go. Think nature first. And that was it.